Welcome to the Connecting with Coincidence radio show with Dr. Bernie Beitman, M.D., bringing together the world's synchronicity experts to help you use meaningful coincidences to develop spiritually, psychologically, and practically. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence into your web browser to find the book, website, Psychology Today blog, YouTube channel, and Facebook page. And now, here is the host of the Connecting with Coincidence radio show, Dr. Bernie Beitman, M.D.
Oh, thanks a lot, Rob. Thanks a lot. Yes, back here we are. I'm Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and let's expand your mind again, maybe a little bit. To expand your mind, here is something interesting. So let's start with some interesting words, like maybe interest, and then interpersonal, and then how about interspecies? And then there is the old intergalactic. Yeah. Now let's go to today's pithy phrase. Low probability coincidences deserve a search for explanation. Yes, tossing them off as chance can miss some useful explanations. And now let's add a new word to our lexicon, coinciders. Coinciders are people who experience meaningful coincidences. We become insiders together, looking at the meanings of synchronicity. We compare our experiences and find that the world is not the way conventional reality defines it. Our minds are immersed in our mental atmosphere, the psychosphere, through which some of us can be telepathic, clairvoyant, and sense the future, as well as find our own human GPS. Sharpen your sensitivity to coincidences. Examine their potential uses and explanations. Read my book, Connecting with Coincidence, and learn along with me. Synchronicity, spoken here. Our guest today is Joseph Mazur, who is Professor Emeritus of Mathematics at Marlboro College in Marlboro, Vermont. He holds a Ph.D. in math from M.I.T., is the recipient of fellowships from several distinguished foundations, including the Guggenheim and Rockefeller Foundations. His works have appeared in Nature, the New York Times, The Guardian, the Wall Street Journal, Slate, and Science. He has been profiled in venues such as NPR's The Hidden Brain and PRI's Innovation Lab, as well as many others. He is the author of Euclid in the Rainforest, Discovering Universal Truth in Mathematics, another book called What's Luck Got to Do with It? The History of Mathematics and Psychology Behind the Gambler's Illusion, and his most recent book, Fluke. Yeah, Fluke, The Math and Myth of Coincidence. And that book brings Joe and me together today. His books have been translated into over a dozen languages. And Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. That was a great introduction. It was quite full. My whole CV there.
Yeah, you've done a lot, Joe. It's wonderful to see your mathematical background and how you think about it. And I also noticed from some of our dialogues there's some flexibility in the way you think about things. You're open to more than just a probabilistic or statistical explanation of some things.
Yes, I am, surely. We know so much, but there's so much we don't know as well. So, I try to keep an open mind about that, even though I try to get some kind of analysis on how the causes give us some connection to the odds. So, but, before I say anything more about that, I should tell you that even though the book, Fluke, tries to corner the odds on some of these very impressive coincidences, it also, I should be sure to tell you that, in fact, those cornered odds are really boundaries. They're not real. You can't take a story, a good coincidence story, and mathematize it to the extent of getting anything precise. You're not going to get precise odds on any of these things. So I just, as a word of caution, I'm just suggesting that when I talk about odds, I'm talking about boundaries of odds. In other words, very, 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 very vague approximations as to how we should think about the odds on these coincidences. So,
excellent,
yeah.
excellent. That's a wonderful point, and I kind of see that too, because when I was in college, I was in a seminar at Swarthmore on probability theory. It wasn't statistics, it was probability theory. I really liked it. I got a double A in it, showed the professor that this was something really important and something to understand, and I really liked the various theories about probability. So I keep trying to understand the probability of various coincidences, and I'm glad to hear you say that it's really hard to get to anything precise, but you may come up with boundaries. Even that, I think we can talk about some. And when I do my own probability analysis, I will have some questions about that for you. When I tell you that we go over the story that happened to me with regarding my father, because how you determine probabilities of events becomes somewhat arbitrary depending on the reference group that you pick to place the potential baseline in. And would you comment on that first?
Yes. With all the stories I've heard, and I've heard, as you probably can gather, I've heard many, especially after the publication of my book. I mean,
yeah.
I think the Sorcerer's Apprentice of coincidence stories, as you are. But I would suggest that there are hidden variables behind all of these stories. And when you dig a little bit deeper than the actual story itself, because the storyteller is telling something from the consciousness angle, but not from the subconscious angle. So there's a lot of detail that's really hidden, and when you try to pry out those details, you begin to see that there are things that you can attach to cause, so that the causes really could be there, which of course annihilates the whole idea of coincidence itself, because a coincidence is that's a couple of events that happen in space and time without an apparent cause.
Yeah.
So once you dig out the cause, it's no longer a coincidence.
Agreed. I underline that point with you. I've said that often. Once you find the cause, it's no longer a coincidence.
But it's also, in my definition, I use the adjective apparent. So apparent is a very relative word, because you have to ask apparent to whom? Apparent to the person relaying that coincidence, or is it apparent to everybody? And surely there are people who might be able to explain that coincidence, which would mean that it wouldn't be a coincidence in general. So there's that the rub is you worry about that cause being surfaced in some way.
That's the idea of apparent is really a very good question right there. Just what do we mean by apparent? I mean, it's subjective, is what you're saying.
It is, yes. Not, and there are many coincidences where, in my book, I talk about the head scratchers, and the head scratchers are those coincidences where you can't even get to the analysis at all. There's nothing that you can really get your fingers on and say, I'm going to crunch some numbers here and see some relationship between what I know is true in, let's say, physics or the world,
yeah,
with what has actually happened in these events.
Each of these segments is a little over 11 minutes. We have about 2 minutes left, but I have a question about the difference in your mind between explanation and cause.
Yeah. Explanation means you already know something about the cause, and you're ready to put things together so that you can actually explain that cause. Some causes are very difficult to even explain, so there's a real rough difference there, because you may know that there's a cause, but you may not know you may not know how to explain that cause. So there are many causes, for example, in physics for sure, where we know that there's a cause of events happening, and we're not able to explain those things.
So you can know there's a, then how do you know there's a cause if you can't explain it?
Well, when you get into atomic physics, for example, we know that there's a cause for atoms communicating with each other over long distances.
Oh, okay.
But we know that there is a cause for that, but there's actually no explanation, no rational explanation that we know of.
Oh boy, I understand that. So I don't want to get into that right now because that would get us twisted.
But if I can just finish
Go ahead.
Saying something about that, it's that you know there's a cause, but that's what the problem is. In other words, you now have an unsolved problem on your hands, and that's what people are working on. So in other words, people would work on something they know is there, and yet they have not really surfaced any kind of explanation for that. That's what physicists do in general.
They know there's a cause because there's a correlation between two spooky action at a distance, for example. We're going to end this section. You've been listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network with our guest, Joe Mazur.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Welcome back to CC with BB. Yes, I'm Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. I'm Smee, and I'm on your host, and we are here with Joe Mazur, and we're rocking and rolling about probability and statistics and explanation, but we're going to get into the question. One of the questions that bothered me as we talk about explanation and cause is probability and explanation. Is some people almost use probability of a coincidence in a sentence that makes it sound like a cause.
You're asking me that question. Huh?
I'm asking the statistician, mathematician.
Okay. Of course, it's not an explanation. It's not an explanation. You're making a correlation. You're suggesting there is something that's going on, but it certainly isn't an explanation. I mean, a good example of this is cancer and smoking. For years and years, people didn't know anything about the causes of cancer and the relationship between cancer and smoking until the Second World War, when women started to come into the industry and started smoking, and suddenly there's this spike in cancer, lung cancer in women. So that you know that there's something going on, and you know that somehow cancer must be the cause, but there's no explanation. So that's an example of that.
How about with some of the coincidences? What do you do with probability, explanation, and cause?
Well, if we think of it as a coincidence, then we believe there's no apparent cause. Otherwise, we wouldn't call it a coincidence. But there are some things that we just can't explain, and yet we know that there must be some kind of a cause. Although there are coincidences where we can't explain, and we believe that there's no cause, or there is some kind of synchronicity, as you say, where we're talking about something that's happening with a collective subconscious that is going on. That's a possibility. I mean, I'm not ruling any of that out, for sure.
Good. So let's do the story that I sent you about what happened with me and my father. It happened for our listeners at 11 p.m. On February 26, 1973. I was 31 years old. Suddenly, I found myself bent over the kitchen sink in an old Victorian house on Hayes Street in the Fillmore district of San Francisco. I was choking on something caught in my throat. I couldn't cough it up. I hadn't eaten anything. I didn't know what was in my throat. I'd never choked for this long before. Finally, after 15 minutes or so, I could swallow and breathe normally. The next day, my brother, on my birthday, called to tell me that my father had died in Wilmington, Delaware at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. He was 3,000 miles away and 3 time zones away. 2 a.m. in Wilmington was 11 p.m. in California when I was choking. My father had bled into his throat and choked on his own blood at about the same time I was uncontrollably choking. He died on February 27th, my birthday. I have many stories like that. I looked around for them. I call it simulpathity, feeling at a distance, or feeling simultaneously at a distance. At least 50 similar stories. I'm sure there are more accessible. On my Weird Coincidence survey, more than 2,000 responders said that sometimes this happens to them. So it looks like a phenomenon that is not just isolated to Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. It's something that seems to happen out there in the real world. But let's talk about the one with me, and I'd like to know how you think about it in probability terms.
Well, whenever I hear a story like that, and trust me, I've heard a few like that, not quite as good as that. That is quite good. And that is a head scratcher. But I will also say that there are some questions that you have to start digging into. And
yes,
there are hidden variables. So,
yes.
For example, I would say, did your father have health complications?
Yes, he did.
So you knew that already. right?
Yes, I knew that already.
So you already had that.
Yes.
Where was the blood coming from? His nosebleed, or?
I don't know. It bled into his throat, is all I was told.
Mm-hmm. And your brother is not an identical twin, right?
No.
Okay, and there's a reason why I asked that, and you probably understand the reason why I asked that.
Well, why don't you tell our audience?
Yeah, well, there are these identical twin studies that suggest that there is some kind of telepathy that's going on, and some kind of unknown. The causes are really not known, but I have identical twin grandchildren, and I know that I've seen this happen so many times. When one of the twins, when they were younger, much younger, they're now 16. So when they were younger, one of them would be having some kind of an ailment of some sort, but far away from the other, and the other somehow was troubled. And so there was a feeling of trouble that one had in sympathy for the other. So how does that happen? That kind of thing does happen apparently in twins, and twin studies support that kind of understanding that there is some telepathy that's going on between twins. At a young age, I don't know what happens at an older age. But,
there's study out of New Zealand that looked systematically at the same question.
That's right.
And it happened with older ones too. It got kind of funny, so that one older twin, maybe at least over 20, probably older, is that the one twin would kept getting in trouble physically in various ways, and the other one would feel it, and one who would feel it would complain and say, "Why don't you take better care of yourself? Because you keep affecting me this way."
And synchronous sympathetic reactions, but they rarely, if ever, are duplications or mimicries of sympathetic events. So person A might undergo some trauma while person B feels some representative looming reaction, but it doesn't feel the pain.
In some instances, as with my father, it is the same. A daughter burns her hand, and the mother's hand feels like it's burning. There are direct parallel stories as well, besides what you're talking about, a general feeling of something's wrong.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get back to this story.
Right. So I would have a question: how often were you and your brother in contact?
It's not my brother; it's my father.
No, I know, but your brother. Your brother called you, right? Isn't that what you said? Your brother called the next day on your birthday.
He told me about it the next day. Yes.
Right. So now your brother might have known about it the day before, when your father was choking, and somehow there is some telepathy between you and your brother now.
Great. That's a great idea.
Okay. That's why I asked about the twin question.
Okay, I didn't understand that. Very good. Okay. And that's part of the trouble with a lot of these telepathic things in clairvoyance sometimes too, is you don't know where the person is picking it up from, and that's a good question.
So then, how close were you to your father?
This told me I was much closer than I believed that I was.
Yes, it certainly suggests that.
It's made me closer to him since then too.
Yeah. So the telepathy even goes that further away. Huh?
Yes, it does.
And did anything like that ever happen to you before?
Never choked anything like that before.
You never choked. You never felt some kind of telepathy with your father that was happening far away. So it was a one-time thing, but it was the death. So yeah. So gee.
Well, let me ask you some specific questions here. When I talk to statisticians, if I'm to determine the probability of this event, which I try to do for the coincidences that I analyze, I'm told that I multiply the base rates of each of the events, as you're implying. How often did I choke? And just what's the base rate of a 64-year-old man with some medical problems? He had a hepatic artery aneurysm that was supposedly cured, but it wasn't with a graft. What's the base rate of a person with hepatic artery aneurysm, which is rare, bleeding into his throat? Those would be two base rate potentials.
Yeah, but there is also the question of how worried you were about your father for days before that, let's say, or weeks before that.
Not at all, because he was supposed to be recovering.
Yeah. Recovery is an interesting word, though. Recovery can mean all sorts of things. You still internalize it. You know, my wife's father had 4 heart attacks, and over a period of about 40 years, and my wife never ever felt comfortable about any of those recoveries. So there's a kind of a discomfort about the recovery as well.
I did not think much about it as the best way to tell you. Consciously, yeah. I love that you're psychodynamic in there. I mean, MIT got that into you somehow. I don't know. You were in Boston. I don't know, but you were born in New York City, I think.
Yeah.
Pardon me, Far Rockaway.
No, Bronx.
Oh, Bronx. Okay, even better. I got relatives there. So. We're coming to the end of this segment. So my final question before I mention this is: does time between events make any difference? We'll get back to that. You've been listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, M.D. on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Our guest is Joe Mazur, a mathematician.
Broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond. You're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Den.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, After the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Yada-doo-da-doo-da-doo. We are rocking with mathematician Joe Mazur, talking about synchronicity, coincidences, simultaneity, and probability explanations. But Joe, my question, and get back to some of yours, is when I am told by statisticians, and David Hand is one of them, and then I had some communications with him. He was on the show several months ago, and a statistician around here, is that here are two events with a base rate, each with a base rate. My father choking on his own blood, my choking. And figure out the base rate of each one of those and multiply the base rate, and we get the probability estimate of what that coincidence is. Isn't that standard statistician thinking?
It certainly is. But before you get to that base rate, you also have to uncover some of those
hidden variables.
Yeah.
And that's where the reference group you pick makes a difference. And parenthetically, there was a researcher, a genetic researcher, who was studying a very rare genetic disorder, and then discovered that her daughter had the same disorder. And there was no genetics in the family of this thing. So that looked like a very low probability event.
It happens more rarely less rarely than you think, I should say. Yeah, it happens very often. In fact,
that people are studying what they're.
Yes, physicians, for example, dying or having the ailment of their specialty. That happens very regularly.
What do you make out of that?
Well, there are, again, if you look at some of the hidden variables, some of those people go into that profession because they know of relatives who are genetically connected to them who have those ailments, and therefore, brothers, for example, brothers or sisters who have an ailment, and then they really are focused on trying to find some kind of reason or cure or whatever. And some of this is, of course, subconscious, some of it is conscious.
I know a guy who did it consciously. His mother had many psychosomatic ailments that were probably depression, and he studied psychosomatics and depression and began this whole new thing of collaborative care between primary care physicians and psychiatrists. But he did that consciously. How does someone know that her daughter is going to have the same genetic disorder subconsciously?
That you'd have to ask somebody who knows more about that than I do. But I really can't answer that one.
It still may be subconscious, but that would have to be like precognitive. It would have to be like knowing it at some different level.
That's right.
Okay. And I think that's reasonable. But David Hand wouldn't be thinking like that, because that would be psi kind of thinking. So I'm looking at more conventional thinking too. As I look at all this, I try to touch that base. So when I ask you the question just from straight statistical thinking, this is what I'm asking you to do: straight statistician conventional thinking. You get two base rates, you multiply them, and you get the probability of the coincidence. But what I'm asking you is that, to me, the time between the two events is an important variable. So since it happened at approximately the same time between my father and me, that makes the probability lower than if I would have been choking like weeks before and then he died of choking in his throat, or I didn't know about it and then was choking weeks later and then I heard about it, which would be unlikely. But it's the time span question that I'm asking, as it's influenced on the probability estimate in conventional statistics.
Right. It certainly makes a better story. For sure. I mean, if it was a week before, it would be okay. It would be a good story, but it just, there would be some kind of worry about, oh, gee, what else were you thinking about at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it does sort of dissipate the the whole idea of the coincidence, but it still would be a story, but it wouldn't be as good.
If they were further apart, you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would ask this, to think about all the times you were feeling fine, and when a close friend or family member would call and relay some other bad news that you didn't expect, what happens then? You see, in other words, we're discounting those other times, and
Right.
that's a standard in statistics. We have to be very careful about all the times we discount.
Yes.
As you mentioned, I wrote a book about gambling, and in gambling that happens almost all the time. We remember our losses, we remember our wins, but we forget our losses, and so those are kinds of things that come into play as well. So
That's selective. Yeah.
Yeah, it's selective memory, sure.
Yeah. And once you say that, it becomes hard to argue it because you can't remember all the times you thought about something.
Right. And the death of a father is a significantly emotional moment, right? It's probably a moment when it's so significant beyond all other moments of a life's emotions.
Yes.
So it captures and triggers any attaching episodes of sympathy.
Yeah, and I might have forgotten about the choking at the sink if I hadn't heard about my father dying at around the same time.
Mm-hmm. But at the moment of hearing your father's death and hearing that he died, just when you were distressed, you put the two events together as significantly related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether that is a correlation looking for a cause or just...
Right. So you could let's suppose you were not choking at the time, but let's say by that sink you had broken a dish. You broke a dish in the sink, let's say. Wouldn't you have recalled that broken dish, as a moment of a momentous synchronous connection to your father's choking?
Yeah, or
the same thing. Story would be there.
The story would be there, or I burned my hand on the stove around that time, and I would remember it. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
So something else would have taken the place of choking to maintain the connection, because the human mind is trying to maintain, it's trying to maintain a soulful connection with the life and everlasting memories of a parent. Yeah. It's a huge thing for a parent to die. I mean, it's, as you know, and I remember the story of my father dying, and I had not had a very good relationship with my father. And I thought all along, I knew he had emphysema, and I thought, one of these days he's going to die, and should I care? And I got the phone call, like you got the phone call, and I got the phone call, and I knew that it was a phone call of my father dying, and a flood of tears came out of me. That it was just, I was in such heavy emotion that I couldn't control myself.
Yeah. Well, it's still, my question still is the time between the events as a thing to wonder about, as influencing the probability. But we can go to some of the very interesting stories that you have. I like the one appeared in Slate about the DuPont, Ted running into the guy from DuPont or the DuPont. So running into people in airports or faraway places has a pretty high base rate, and people don't know that, traveling in social groups, so same socioeconomic groups. But this one looked a little different. Could you begin to tell us that before this part of this? We have about a minute and a half left for this segment.
I remember this correctly. I was giving a reading at a Fluke, I believe, and it was in a bookstore, and this man came up to me and he said, I have a terrific coincidence to tell you about. I was on a plane, and the plane was delayed for a long time, and they were told that they were trying to contact somebody who knows something about an engine that was, I don't remember exactly the mechanism of the engine, but he said they had been trying to contact this person, and the person sitting next to him worked for DuPont, and that the person telling the story was working for DuPont, but the person sitting next to him was trying to make the contact, and so there was it was out of 4,000 or 40,000 employees of DuPont, they were contacting the person actually next to the person that they actually wanted to contact.
In the airport?
No, it was in the plane.
Oh, it was in the plane. He was sitting next to him.
Yes, he was sitting right next to him in the plane.
Okay, we're coming to the end of this one. I like these ones of sitting next to people on planes.
Yeah, it's not one of the best stories, but
that's a good one. Well, let's analyze it in our next segment. You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, M.D. That is me on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. And our guest is Joe Mazur, and we are probability guys today.
X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com. or www.xzonetvchannel.com, or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Yes. Welcome back to CC with BB. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, talking to Joe Mazur, talking about sitting down next to in a plane next to somebody that a guy was searching for out of 140,000 employees at DuPont. The guy he was looking for was sitting next to him on the plane. Hey, Joe, how'd that happen? How do you think about that statistically?
Yeah. Well, you do have a number there, 140,000, let's say, whatever the number is, you've got something to go on as a number. You can limit that to, of course, who's the person who really knows and what department does he know, so you're narrowing down those numbers. Then the question is, what is the connection between the guy who's sitting, the two people sitting next to each other? So that's a much more interesting story because they're connected in some way.
Yeah.
And to dig into that would be an interesting piece of information because you'd start to not only get closer to the cause, but you'd also be getting some kind of an interesting story of their lives. In other words, work backwards and say, well, how do they get to where they are in this connection? They're not related in any other way that we know of. So there has to be some kind of a relationship of what made them decide to be in those positions to begin with. There are lots of things that could go on that makes the story even more juicy.
I really, I'm a little surprised at the way our conversation has gone. I thought you would be more statisticianally than you actually are.
Yeah, but you have to know numbers for that. And this is not one of the ones that I actually dove into for analysis. This was after I wrote the book, and there were some stories that were coming along that were coming along very fast. And you can imagine after publication of this book, which had enormous numbers of sales and translations all over the world, I was getting at least maybe 50 stories a day for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. Because it was on BBC and the BBC had collected a whole bunch of stories from their people. And so they wanted me to analyze those stories, which I did. I said, I'd only analyze 12 of them. And in the end, I only analyzed 4 of them. So it's hard to do it, actually, because it takes time. And it takes a little bit of digging.
Yeah. That's a wonderful response you had to your book.
Yeah, no, wonderful, but I didn't expect that, and I didn't really want it. but as you know, in the book, I categorized the stories into 10 categories, and the most common thing is you find the category where two people meet in a strange place. 95% of the stories are like that. They just, oh, gee, I was in Mumbai and I ran into my neighbor on a street in Mumbai. That's the typical story. And then there are these stories that are really colossal that you can't imagine happening. And then when you start to think about them, you say, well, gee, I can imagine happening. I have one story, if you don't mind my telling it.
Please do.
One of the most colossal stories I've ever heard. Two businessmen, this is told by one of the businessmen, on the Staten Island ferry in New York. And one of them was trying to give a business card to the other. And he took a business card out of his wallet, and just as he took the business card out of his wallet flipped, somehow. He lost control of his wallet, and the wallet fell overboard.
Oh.
And thinking that it would never be seen again. 6 months later, a fisherman in Nantucket gives him a call and says, "Is this your wallet?" And turned out to be that the fisherman was a friend of his and saw the credit cards in his wallet, called him and said, "Is this your wallet?" He caught the wallet in his net. Now, how do you take that kind of a story? Well, the first thing you think of is this guy is bullshitting, right? I mean, this is, how could this possibly happen? And I don't know this guy. I can't, corroborate anything about this. The only way to do it is to talk to the fisherman. And even then, you still have two guys who are making up this story. We don't know. But then I kind of started to think of all sorts of other possibilities. And so I contacted this guy again, and I said, "Look, was there anything missing from the wallet?" And he said, "Yeah, just the money." Well, okay, if it was just the money, what's more likely to happen than this wallet just finding its way up to Nantucket through the water. It's clearly, it fell possibly not into the water, but on the lower deck or something like that. Somebody picked it up, took the wallet, put it in some place, and somebody just somehow traveled to Nantucket with the wallet or something like that. But, it opens up all sorts of possibilities because the actual event is so colossally unlikely that you just crave for some better explanation. And yet, you can say, well, maybe the wallet did just get swallowed by a whale and the whale went to Nantucket and spit the wallet out or something like that. It's such a colossal story. You dream all sorts of other possible explanations.
It's the money being taken out that makes it suspicious.
Right. Yeah. How did the money get out of the wallet?
Yeah, and that's just something else. That was not a random event.
Right.
I can't see it falling on the lower deck. They're kind of smooth, but the sides are smooth. But who knows what winds can do?
There is no lower deck anyhow. I just guessed though.
That's right. Wow.
Or somebody just fished it out in the bay in New York, and that fisherman was on his way to Nantucket. That's another possibility.
Well, that the guy who lost the wallet knew the fisherman makes it even more weird.
Yeah.
That part of the story does something to something. I don't know how to explain that one either. That he knew the fisherman knew him. That does something to the probability. There. I just was reading about how a guy in Hawaii who makes a living does as part of his living he finds rings that have been lost by people. And can sometimes return them. They drop them in the water, and he finds them somehow. There's an old story by Herodotus about a ring being thrown in the water and the fish being served that had the ring in it, and those stories happen. There are also made-up fish stories about cods and false teeth, just to make it a funny thing. But the stories of people finding rings, that's usually what it is, or a piece of jewelry in a fish, or finding it 20 years later washing up on the shore. Those stories there's a lot of those stories.
Well, there's got to be a lot of rings out there in the world. That's a lot of lost rings is what we're talking about.
Yes, and there's a lot of rings out there in the world. That's right. That's very good. There's a lot of rings out there in the world that they somehow find their way back to the owner.
Some of them do.
Yes.
The majority don't.
Majority don't. So we only have about a couple of minutes left, Joe. What I am coming to have to say is that low probability events are quite common.
Common is one of those other words, like apparent. What is the common?
What is common?
Yeah, what is common? But yeah, I think, what mathematicians would say to this is that if the probability is not zero, then it will happen. It may take a million years for it to happen, but that's the idea, is that as long as it's not zero, then it's bound to happen at some time, as long as time continues.
Yeah, well, that's the second problem, is that it may be a million years before it would happen. Yeah. I'm talking about like these ring things, and the thing with my father, and that other people have similar things, that the telepathy is common. I mean, I think it happens regularly. There's data to show that it happens that happens often, so that what appear to be low probability events are not so low probability, just because they're outside of the normal way of thinking about reality makes them weird. But they're pointing to something that it happens on a regular basis out there.
Yeah, and you used this word earlier on, the psychosphere.
Yes.
And that psychosphere, is that connected in any way with telepathy?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and is telepathy something that really can be explained by some kind of radio wave or physics that is actually going to tell us that it actually happened?
And that's what a lot of people are going for. Right. Well, Joe, we've come to the end of this really wonderful discussion, and I thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me on the show. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. You've been listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Thanks, Joe Mazur, for being with us.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.